Time again for State of Play. There's one more week until the Delaware primary, so let's talk about something besides Chip Flowers with Stephanie Hansen, former Newcastle County Council President, now with the law firm of Young, Conaway, Stargett, and Taylor. We're also joined here by Michael Stafford. He's an attorney and syndicated columnist whose work has been featured on MSNBC. So on the other side of the aisle from Chip Flowers and Sean Barney, the Republicans running for state treasurer, Ken Simpler against Sheriff Valenzuela. The Simpler campaign very excited about a straw poll in Roxana, I guess last week, that gave him an overwhelming majority of support from the people who were at that Republican gathering. This is really going to be a slam dunk for Simpler as that straw poll put it out.
Well, I mean, is Roxana the bellwether for the state? I'm not sure about that, but if I were Ken, I would be sitting very happy right now because, you know, the party has united behind him. I mean, if you think about the Republican Party in the state right now, the losing streak that it's been on for a number of years, there are a lot of people across the ideological spectrum, people who just a couple of cycles ago were enemies, you know, fighting it out against each other in the trenches. They've all rallied behind him. And I think there's a widespread recognition within the base that Ken, out of all the candidates, Ken is the one that has the best chance this year to actually get elected. And so there is a united sort of front behind him. On the other hand, with Ms. Valenzuela, I mean, she's certainly not doing herself any favors, refusing to debate. I mean, it's almost like she's not running a campaign in some ways. So I do think Ken gets through the primary. What happens to him beyond that, that's another question.
Is it interesting for Valenzuela not to take part in a party-sponsored debate, also to request that there be no photographs or video taken during a debate that she did participate in? Not really the best way to go about campaigning.
That's bizarre. I mean, it's not like she's interviewing for a position to be the librarian for the Western Sussex County Ladies Book Club. You know, she's interviewing, if you will, for a position in a public office and a statewide public office. If you don't know how to use and work with the media when you're running for a statewide public office, you're not going to be able to be an effective candidate, and you're probably not going to win. I mean, the media to a candidate is like a hammer to a carpenter. If you don't know how to use a hammer, you're not going to make a very good carpenter, and you're probably not going to be a carpenter. If she doesn't learn how to work with the media in a statewide campaign, it's more than a candidate faux pas. It's fatal to the campaign.
And it's particularly strange. I mean, this is a person who has been on a pretty large media stage. I mean, she was a speaker, a featured speaker at the Republican National Convention 2 years ago. So she's dealt with national media. I mean, she's been out there. She ran a lieutenant gubernatorial race 2 years ago. She interacted with the media there. So what precipitated all this, what the strategy is, I don't think there is any. I think she's frustrated that things aren't going well against Ken.
And moving up a little bit further on the Republican side of the primary ballot, what a difference 4 years makes. In 2010, the political world was abuzz with the Mike Castle versus Christine O'Donnell contest, which O'Donnell famously won. And now you have Kevin Wade versus Carl Smink. What the Republicans do here, not exactly the dramatic cash that the Castle-O'Donnell race. I don't think we'll see Wolf Blitzer coming to Newark to moderate a debate in this race like we did 4 years ago. But what are your thoughts on that race?
Doubtful. You know, but what do Republicans do besides weeping quietly at the shattered pieces of the party? I mean, this race, and look, I know Kevin's a good guy, but the race really highlights the fundamental problem that the GOP has right now. I mean, it's one thing for Charlie Copeland to get out there and say one party rule is a bad thing. Sure, everybody can agree to that, but what's the alternative? If the alternative is bad candidates running on even worse issues, one party rule is going to be here to stay. It's the lesser of two evils.
Yeah.
This race highlights that.
And the Republicans are going to stay home. I mean, the result is there's no one at the top of the ticket that's going to get anyone fired up to get up and go out and vote, except a very small core group of people. And that's it. There's going to be a low voter turnout.
The best thing they can hope for is that these guys don't embarrass themselves publicly in a way that damages the rest of the ballot.
And so Kevin Wade doing his best to get attention. To get attention. No, I wasn't going to say that, but to get attention for his campaign. He was, I guess, earlier in the month in Israel with the ongoing conflict there with Gaza, sort of embedding himself with Israeli forces, and now we get word that he's on his way to Texas to visit the U.S.-Mexico border and see the border situation and learn what he can from that. Is he sort of putting the cart in front of the horse by doing these kinds of things? That he's not in office. He needs to work to get in before he really.
He's not running for office.
No.
He's out doing his historical or historian day trips and having fun, and trying to like make that into a campaign position of some sort. He's not running a campaign.
Yeah.
He's out there being correspondent.
Exactly. It's not a campaign. This isn't a real campaign. It is. If you're Kevin Wade, the first thing you have to do is build name recognition. The only way you can do that if you have no money, which the campaign really doesn't have, is old handshake, door-to-door style politics, being at every chicken dinner up and down the state. You don't get many Delaware votes down in Texas. Exactly.
Not that will pass the muster at the Elections Commission.
No,
Let's hope.
no.
So one more thing, real quick. Any races further down on the ballot that are sort of you guys are watching that have your attention? Anything you think interesting, primary-wise, in the General Assembly to be looking out for?
I think probably one of the more interesting races that I'm watching is the race Brian Townsend against Dave Tackett. Brian Townsend is the current state senator for the area around Newark, first term, and Dave Tackett is the sitting county council person for the area and has been that county council person for quite some time. Both of them are good campaigners. I think both of them can raise money. So and they're both viable candidates. I mean, here we have a race where, in so many races, you don't actually have viable candidates. Right. This is a race where there are two good viable candidates.
That's the interesting race too, at least to me, because I think Brian has been such an effective legislator. I mean, he's been a breath of fresh air. It was a breath of fresh air when he took out, Tony DeLuca. I think he's done a good job down in Dover. I mean, obviously, somebody in the district isn't pleased because he's got a credible primary opponent. They certainly saw an opportunity there. But I think that's a really telling move because if you look at how things have shaped up down in Dover, it really is in some ways that sort of progressive side of the Democratic Party that's the real opposition. And Brian certainly, I think, is at least in many ways part of that. So here's hoping he wins, at least for May.
All right. We'll keep an eye. It's good to have you both here to sort it all out. Stephanie Hansen and Michael Stafford, thanks so much for being here. State of Play is also online at newsworks.org/Delaware. Just click the drop-down box in the upper right-hand side of the page.